A Year in the Life of John Lennon, 1971. After the emotional roller coaster of 1970, John Lennon entered 1971 with newfound clarity. He was no longer a Beatle, but a solo artist with a voice louder than ever before. In this video, we'll take a month-by-month journey through John Lennon's 1971, a year that was just as impactful as the one before. January 1971. Settling in New York City. In January 1971, John Lennon and Yoko Ono decided to make New York City their new home. Lennon was drawn to the city's creative energy and political activism, a stark contrast from the quiet life at Tittenhurst Park. The move to New York would mark a major shift in his life, personally, musically, and politically. February 1971 recording sessions begin for Imagine. By February, Lennon was back in the studio, working on what would become his most famous solo album, Imagine. The sessions took place at his Ascot Sound Studios at Tittenhurst Park, as well as at the record plant in New York. The album would combine Lennon's raw, emotional style from Plastic Ono Band with more accessible melodies and political messages. March 1971, Power to the People. In March, Lennon released the politically charged single Power to the People. It was inspired by his growing interest in radical left-wing politics and the activism happening around him in New York. The song became an anthem for social justice movements, as Lennon increasingly used his music to voice his political beliefs. April 1971. Lennon's involvement with the anti-war movement. By April, John and Yoko had fully immersed themselves in the anti-Vietnam War movement. The couple became close to key figures in the activist scene and even held press conferences to speak out against the war. For Lennon, activism was becoming just as important as his music. May 1971, recording wraps on Imagine. After months of recording, Lennon wrapped up production on Imagine in May. The title track, which would go on to become Lennon's most iconic song, was a plea for peace and unity. It was inspired by Yoko Ono's conceptual art, and its message of hope continues to resonate worldwide. June 1971, collaboration with George Harrison. June saw John reconnecting with his former bandmate, George Harrison. The two worked on a few tracks together, including George's It's So Hard, which would be featured on the Imagine album. The collaboration showed that while the Beatles were no longer a band, the friendships between them still remained strong. July 1971, Lennon's political voice grows louder. In July, Lennon's political activism reached new heights. He began speaking more openly about issues like racism, women's rights, and economic injustice. His song, Give Peace a Chance, became a rallying cry at demonstrations around the world, and his political messages were now being heard far beyond the music scene. August 1971, a new home in New York City. By August, John and Yoko had officially moved into their apartment at the Dakota in New York. Lennon loved the vibrancy of the city and the freedom it gave him to create and live without the constant media scrutiny he had faced in England. New York would become the city he called home for the rest of his life. September 9th, 1971. Imagine is released. On September 9th, 1971, John Lennon's Imagine was released to widespread acclaim. The album was a perfect blend of personal reflection and social commentary. Songs like Jealous Guy showed Lennon's vulnerability, while the title track, Imagine, offered a utopian vision of a world without war, conflict, or inequality. October 1971. Controversy and criticism. In October, not everyone was praising Lennon's political messages. His outspoken views on war, class, and government led to some controversy, particularly in the US government. There were rumors that the Nixon administration was keeping a close eye on Lennon because of his growing influence on young voters and anti-war activists. November 1971, Happy Christmas, War is Over. Recording. As 1971 drew to a close, Lennon and Yoko recorded what would become another iconic song, Happy Christmas, War is Over. The song was part of their ongoing peace campaign, reminding the world that war is over if you want it. Released in time for Christmas, the song has since become a timeless holiday classic with a message that resonates across generations. December 1971. Lennon's growing legal troubles. While Lennon's artistic output in 1971 was prolific, he was also facing challenges on the legal front. The US government had started efforts to deport Lennon, accusing him of being a threat due to his political activism. The next few years would see Lennon battling to stay in the country he had come to love. December 31st, 1971. Looking forward. As 1971 came to an end, John Lennon had firmly established himself as a solo artist, activist, and cultural icon. He had found a new home in New York and was using his platform to promote peace, equality, and social change. The world had embraced Lennon's vision, and his influence was stronger than ever. For 1971 was a year of growth and expression for John Lennon, a year that would shape his legacy for generations to come. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.